choice back there.
Well, let me know if you ever need help with your car. Happy to.
Don't push it.
Oh, ow, that's actually kind of hurt.
Fran, filter out the nonsense. It's the orange one, numbnuts.
All right, thank you guys. I really, really appreciate it. What I appreciate most of all is how 41 states are represented here and how you all flew out. And I know that there's a lot of organizations that have secret money, big money. We have none of that, right? And so we're asking you to do extraordinary things. We're asking you to spend your weekends and your weekdays out there volunteering, and we ask you to come here on your own dime. I mean, that's crazy. We asked you to use up your vacations to do this, whether it's coming out here or sometimes you fly to a different state that has a hot possibility, a resolution that might pass. And I've seen people give up their whole vacations for the whole year. And you know how hard it is out there. And maybe people in Washington and New York don't know. But to use up that valuable time on low wages, etc., to come and fight for your country, it's amazing. And I stand in awe of you. And I've told some of these stories before, but I've seen the volunteers who were so afraid to speak to others, let alone legislators, get beyond that fear. Yes, stutter a little bit. Yes, pause a lot. But they fought through that, the courage it takes to fight through that. I saw a volunteer who had a broken back who was making phone calls from the hospital to their legislators. We've seen it in the snow, in the rain, and the shine, and Mike's right. When we walked in the snow with Larry Lessig, who I think is an absolute American hero, I thought it was the cold that was going to do it, but no, it was the walking. Yeah, we've done so much together, and I know that all of you in this room are genuine because we have very, very little money, and so the overwhelming majority of you are just volunteers, and you do it for love of country. And it reminds me of a Republican legislator who gave a speech in one of the states that we won in, and she said that she lost her son in Iraq, and he was fighting for freedom, she believed, and it's the least we can do to fight for freedom here at home. And so, we all make room for veterans on airplanes, and we honor them with decals we put on our cars, and so many other things that we do to honor veterans. And that's great, and they've sacrificed so much for this country. But we've been in Afghanistan for 17 years. Did that help any of your freedom? Did you gain an ounce of extra freedom here in America from that war in Afghanistan? I know the defense contractors gained a lot. I know they gained billions upon billions upon billions of dollars. I know the instability that we had because of the Iraq war also gained billions of dollars for the oil companies. But did we gain any extra freedom? But the work we do here, and some of you are also veterans, that actually is about our freedom. It's actually about our democracy that has been ripped from us, stolen from us. So sometimes I speak in stark language, and it bothers people who are in the elite. They say, no, you shouldn't be that loud. You shouldn't be that angry. But if you notice what's happening in this country and you're not angry, I don't know that that's a point of pride for you. And so, but we always do it politically. You know that. And we do it in the most American way possible, with Americans like yourselves going and volunteering at all these different state houses and talking to your legislators and showing up. I remember in New Jersey, hundreds of people showed up, and the state legislators were blown away, and they had never seen anything like that. There was actually one other group that showed up. It was the Koch brothers. They had sent their lobbyist in, and they were overwhelmed. There were so many of us that they were practically laughed out of the room. So that's what democracy is supposed to look like, and that's how we get it back. But a lot of the elites, and unfortunately a lot of the people in the media, they pretend as if we don't have that problem, as if we have a democracy, but we already know that it's gone. You have seen the Princeton study. I'm going to talk about it in a second and show it to you in greater detail. Public opinion has zero effect on public policy. That is not a democracy. So are they happy about that? Are they indifferent about that? Well, I don't know about them, but I'm angry about it. And I know you are, okay? That doesn't mean that we act in angry ways. It means that we put that energy into doing things the right way, politically, constitutionally, legally, okay? So, look, I get frustrated at conservatives oftentimes, and anybody who watches the show knows that. And part of the reason is that they misdirect that legitimate frustration towards people with no power. They remember what Trump was talking about during the campaign, and there was a lot of truth in that. And I know some Democrats will get really mad at me saying that. But there is a swamp in Washington. If he actually meant that he was going to drain the swamp, I would be in favor of that. Unfortunately, his actions show otherwise. And he talked about the rigged system, and a lot of conservatives did, and a lot of progressives talked about a rigged system. You know why? Because the system is rigged. It is rigged. And I'm going to show you how they rigged it in a second. But the people in Washington and the people on television tell you pretty little lies, that it is not rigged, and that the elite don't rule this country, that the donors are not the people who decide what happens in government. That is a laughable proposition. Everybody knows that if you have private financing of elections, these politicians will work for private interests. It is the most obvious thing in the world. Bill Moyers has an excellent example. He says, imagine you go, a batter goes up to the plate and he says, just hold on 1 second, and he hands $10,000 to the umpire. And he says, no, there's, in the words of Justice Kennedy and Citizens United, not only is that not corrupt, it doesn't even give you the appearance of corruption. Which maniac would believe that? No real American believes that. And that is what our donors do time and time again, except it's not $10,000. It is sometimes $50 million. And they tell us there is no appearance of corruption? Are you insane? So, it is bipartisan. The Clintons, they have a personal wealth now of $150 million. Good for them, I guess. Remember when they built that giant business to get that? Oh, no, right, they didn't. They were just politicians. Remember when Bill Clinton came from that elite family that already had the $150 million? Oh, no, that's right, he didn't. They just got the money by being politicians. So there's something a little off with that. But that's not the real problem. The real problem, and Washington Post did a good job here, is in totality, in the speeches they have made, the books they have written, but most importantly, the campaign contributions into the Clinton Foundation, I believe the number was $3 billion that the Clintons had collected. Now, do you think that the government of Saudi Arabia gave it because they really care about people's human rights, and that's why they gave to the Clinton Foundation? Come on! Who is so monumentally naive enough to believe that? Do you think that multinational corporations give to Democrats and Republicans because they care about the country? They're literally, by law, not allowed to care about the country. They have a fiduciary responsibility to make every red cent possible. That is why your wages are so low, and that is why they buy every politician they can. For any TV pundit to say that these politicians who accept millions of dollars in donations are honorable people having a legitimate debate about ideas is preposterous. They are bought. They are corrupt. The system is rigged. It is not rigged by some nefarious forces that my friends on the right talk about. There is no Q, there's no V, there's no other letter. Okay? The corruption is right in front of you, to the tune of billions of dollars. People give billions of dollars. Politicians do exactly what they are told. But Morning Joe will tell you, no, how dare you? Lindsey Graham is an honorable gentleman from South Carolina. Lindsey Graham is an honorable gentleman from the Defense Contractors of America. There isn't a war that Lindsey Graham will not sign off on, perhaps even a war within the country, as long as the defense contractors that finances elections are going to make a buck. So that goes for the Democratic side as well. I mean, again, from the earlier to this week, the DNC. Oh, we're not going to take fossil fuel money because it turns out our base doesn't want that. Our voters don't want that. It gives the appearance of corruption that we're in bed with the oil company. And this week they go, just kidding. We are in bed with oil companies. Yes, and we will do exactly what we are told by the oil companies. That's what Tom Perez said. I was told over and over again, hey, Cenk, don't be harsh on Tom Perez. It appears that they did terrible smear campaign against Keith Ellison to make sure that he was not the head of the DNC. But Tom Perez, Keith Ellison, what difference does it make? They're all honorable gentlemen. It makes a giant difference. The Obamas did not want Keith Ellison under any and all circumstances. They smeared him, they attacked him, and they put in their puppet, Tom Perez. Oh, but he once did something positive at the Labor Department. Oh, please. I told you he'd take the corporate money, and he took the corporate money over and over and over again. After he takes millions of dollars, you'd think that ExxonMobil is going to give money to the Democrats. Why? Because they want Medicare for all? Because they really believe in the Medicare, the priorities of progressives in this country, ExxonMobil does? Come on! Let me ask you, and I gotta be harsh about this. Who is stupid enough to believe that? So if you're not that stupid, what are you? So if you go on television over and over again, and yes, by the way, if you're the New York Times, and you keep saying that those are honorable gentlemen, and that they are not influenced by their donors, if you're not stupid, what are you? I'm afraid that you are institutionally corrupt. It's not that that particular writer in the New York Times is a bad person or got bribed. No. They don't need secret conspiracies. So the idea that the right wing has is the media gets together and decide, okay, hey, what are we going to make up today? Right? No, that's not how it works. They just have groupthink. So what do? Who do they cover the most? Politicians with the most amount of money. They say, well, that makes them the most credible. No, that makes them the most corrupt. And what do? The New York Times and all of them, they reward that corruption by saying that's the credible candidate. That is the legitimate candidate. The reality is Larry Lessig is right. That is the candidate that won the Green primary. They were the ones who were most able to take and deliver for the corporations and for the rich. Think about this. One more thing before I actually get to the slides. Yeah. So, I was planning to have this be about a minute. Mike, we're going over. Yeah. I know we got beer coming up, so hold my beer. So, the first time, you name it, Raytheon, ExxonMobil, GM, it doesn't matter. Starbucks, a company you consider to be a good guy or a bad guy, it doesn't matter. The first time that they give money to a politician, they're taking a little bit of a chance. Maybe once they gave money to Bernie Sanders, but they didn't give it to him a second time, right? Because they have a fiduciary responsibility to get a return on investment. If they don't, they can be, and they will be, and they should be fired. So don't worry about the first time they give to a politician. The second time they give to a politician, that means they got a return on investment. So that is corruption. It is guaranteed. They think that we are barbarians at the gate when we talk about that corruption and that rigged system. But what we're saying is literally the most obvious things in the world. Noam Chomsky is right. There is a propaganda model, and it is inflicted upon this whole country. So let me show you what the reality is. So, and there are good people on all sides that help in this. And the first set of numbers comes from our friends that represent us. So they tracked the most 200 most politically active companies, okay, between the years 2010 and 2015. This is a great point that they made. Okay, so they're putting money into campaign donations, independent expenditures, lobbyists, etc. And so how much money did they spend? Wow, my God, they spent $5.8 billion. Now, that is a ton of money. Anthony Kennedy, the Supreme Court, everyone on television tells me they did that for their health. And for your health, because they care so much about you that they just wanted to finance your politicians to the tune of $5.8 billion. No actual American believes that. But now let's talk about, wait. What did they get in return? Because I hear, and let's pause here, and some of my conservative friends will not agree with this, right? I hear that that public financing costs a lot of money. Now, I say, hey, if we do private financing of elections, they're going to work for private interests. They're going to work for the people who sign their checks, and every single American knows that. And that's why that polls at 93% that Americans believe that they represent their donors. The politicians do, not their voters. So if we publicly finance elections, it costs a little bit of money. But what they never tell you is, how much money does it save? So what did they get in return for $5.8 billion to those politicians? And this is just the top 200 corporations. It doesn't include the Koch brothers or Soros or Bloomberg or Sheldon Adelson. It doesn't include all the other corporations. What did they get in return? $4.4 trillion in taxpayer support. Now that is return on investment. The best thing you could buy in America is an American politician. And they buy them by the bucket. They bought almost all of them. And what do the people on television tell you? Pretty little lies about how we have a democracy and that the donations don't influence politicians. Oh, it's just a coincidence that those same companies that happen to give $5.8 billion got back $4.4 trillion in subsidies. I don't care if you're the reddest guy in the reddest state or the bluest voter in the bluest state. You know that isn't true. You know they bought those politicians and got exactly what they paid for. And they took it, and yes, I will say, they robbed us of that $4.4 trillion. That's our taxpayer money. This ExxonMobil, which was for a long time the most profitable company in the world, did they need our taxpayer money? No, of course they don't need it. They're profitable. They're incredibly profitable. I'm not trying to take their profit away, but why do you need extra subsidies? You don't, but you have a fiduciary responsibility to take, and they take it from us. If you're not angry about that, you're not paying attention. And by the way, I'm not trying to pick on companies like ExxonMobil. Apple, which is considered a progressive company, does the same thing. I like their products, but some years they pay $0 in taxes. You are literally the most profitable company in the world. Where the hell did the money go? Where did it go? You're telling me you didn't make any money? But the stock market says otherwise. Your bottom line says otherwise. Who the hell are you kidding? And when they don't pay taxes, who does? You do. That is robbery from every single one of you, and from your families and from your kids. And I'm tired of the robbery. I'm tired of it. So, and look, I mentioned earlier about our conservative friends and how they frustrate me, and they say, look at the powerless. So the guy, the system was rigged by the guy who crossed the border illegally. That guy doesn't have a dollar in his pocket. How the hell did he get to talk to Soros already? If you stop to think about it for a second, none of this makes any sense. The only reason people believe it is because of the overwhelming propaganda. Of course the undocumented immigrants didn't fix the system. You think black people in this country had enough power to fix the system? They didn't fix the system. Okay, they didn't rig the system. You know who has a lot of power? Multinational corporations. You know who has a lot of power? Billionaires. You know who has the most power? The people who give money to politicians. And it isn't a being against the rich. If you're rich and you're LeBron James and you play basketball really well, bless your heart. You're Oprah, you talk really well, bless your heart. Okay, And some of my progressive friends will disagree with me, but if you're Bill Gates and you built that incredible company, bless your heart, okay? There's no harm in making money. All I want you to do is not use that money to bribe our politicians. It's not too much to ask for. It just isn't. That's what James Madison envisioned, that our democracy would be dependent on the people alone, not a couple of people who run casinos, not the corporations. And so if you're looking for who rigged the system, don't look down, look up. And when I tell people that, people on TV, people in progressive organizations in Washington that have been sitting there taking that money for decade after decade, people in right-wing organizations, they all say, oh, how uncivil, how uncivil. You want to crush people underneath you? We'll let you do that all day long. You know what the minimum wage in this country is? It's $7.25, federal minimum wage. If you work 40-hour week, you've worked full-time, you worked a whole year. You know what that equals? $15,000 a year. I bet you that if you asked Washington and the powerful people in Washington, none of them would know that answer. They never thought about it for a second. They don't know anybody who makes the minimum wage. And they don't care about anybody who makes the minimum wage. They aren't in their cocktail parties. It's not that they're bad people. It's their context. It's their bubble. It's their groupthink. Okay? And the system got rigged against those people, and it did get rigged by the people up the top. But those people are the ones that are friends with Morning Joe. And they're friends with Common Cause. Let's keep it real. And they're definitely friends with the Koch brothers. So they don't want you to look up. They don't want you to look up. Now, but it's not to say that I'm not saying that to attack conservatives. I'm frustrated by that line of logic that it's undocumented immigrants or others, right? But it's to say that at least for what I'm saying is, at least for conservative voters, they have the same problems we do. They have the same issues about economic dignity. They have the same problem with health care. They have the same problem with wages. Have they, in my opinion, been misdirected to say, hey, you got a problem with having health care coverage? I got a great idea. We'll give you less. Right? I don't think that's a great idea. Okay? And we can disagree on those. And we could, if we had a democracy, wouldn't that be amazing? And we'd sort it out. But we don't. Instead, what do we have? We have the fundamental corruption that leads George Bush, when he first crafted it, this legislation, to say that the United States government, on your behalf, because that's what the U.S. government is, it's you, is not allowed to negotiate drug prices with drug companies. Why? Drug companies are, I'm sure coincidentally, the number one donors in American politics. Above the oil companies, above the bankers, above the defense contractors. So George Bush decided, well, God, gee, what a funny coincidence. I'm not going to let you negotiate prices. They're going to charge whatever they want. It's robbery at large. Right in front of your eyes. You don't need a conspiracy. They're rubbing your face in it. But Barack Obama, don't worry, everybody. I saw the signs. It said hope. It said change. So he was going to change it. In fact, he ran an ad saying, I'm going to change that they are not allowed to negotiate. I'm going to make sure they negotiate. What did he do? He came in. He passed the Affordable Care Act. Affordable Care Act was previously known as Romney Care. Who was he running against? Mitt Romney. Oh, look at that. You vote for Mitt Romney, you get Romney Care. You vote for Obama, you get Romney Care. That was cooked up by the Heritage Foundation. They then said, no, we are even more vicious now. We want you to have even less health care coverage. So that warmed over conservative plan, Obama passes. We say public option. He says, hell no. Joe Lieberman says no. So you won't get the public option. And by the way, but here's my favorite part. I'll sprinkle on top, just to add insult to injury. We will not negotiate drug prices. Because the Democratic Party, unfortunately, is just as corrupt. Because it isn't about personality. It isn't about whether Barack Obama is a good guy. It would be shocking to me if I was in a room with him and I had a conversation with him that I didn't really like him. I bet if I had a beer with him, it'd go great. You know, they say that about Bush. That wouldn't go well. He's an alcoholic. But I wouldn't want to do that to him, and that doesn't end well. But it's not about their personality. It's not about whether he's a good guy or not. And, of course, what is the people in the media twisted? Oh, so you hate Obama. No, I don't hate Obama. But did he or did he not deliver on that promise? And he didn't. Did he or did he not take a ton of money from the drug companies? Did the Democratic Party take a ton of money from the drug companies, or did they not? But I know what you're thinking, Morning Joe. and I only use him as an example. It was just a coincidence. Joe Scarborough also happened to go to a Koch brothers event, came back with Mika, and they were fawning. Turns out they think the Koch brothers are great, patriotic Americans, and that's why they're involved in politics. Thank you, Morning Joe. I appreciate it for proving the propaganda model 100%. So, the bottom line is they are not working for us. Let me show you who they're working for. So, Princeton study, 20 years. This is before Citizens United, guys. Buckley v. Vallejo, Bellotti, decisions in 1976, 1978. Money is speech. Corporations have speech rights because they're human. Hilarious. And since they're human and they have speech rights, they can start giving money to politicians. And we're toast. And we're done for. Citizens United shot a dead horse. Okay? So, I shot it pretty good, though. I mean, came in with an AK, right? And then you got McCutcheon, etc., right? So, but they studied, Princeton and Northwestern, to give Northwestern credit, studied 1,800 policy positions over 2 decades. Does public opinion affect public policy? So, first, let me show you economic elites, the top 10%. These are the largely the donors. Did their opinion have any effect on public policy? Let's take a look. Oh, that looks like a direct effect. But that's okay. If we have a democracy, I'm sure the other 90% of us will also have a direct effect, right? Because I hear on Morning Joe all the time we have a democracy. So let's find out if that's the case. Average citizens' preferences. Did it affect public policy? So a line that goes up says yes, there is effect, as you're seeing here for the top 10%. Now let's look at the graph for the rest of us. No effect whatsoever. None. You do not live in a democracy. At the state level, thank God, there is still democracy. You don't get these same charts. And in our experience at WolfPac, whether they are Democratic or Republican legislators, they're not easy to talk to, but they actually still do care about their constituents to some degree. And either you could talk to them without a check, which is unbelievable at the national level, not even remotely possible. And so I don't want to depress you because democracy does exist at the state level, and that's how we're going to fix this. But at the national level, it is gone. We're living a charade. It's not true. It's all a kabuki theater, pretending that you have some sort of influence, but all they care about is the donors. And then the Supreme Court and everyone on TV will tell you, no, they're having a debate about ideas. Ha, ha, ha. Joke's on us. So now let me show you what the results of that are. This is a chart that shows you productivity and compensation in the United States from the 1940s to close to present day. So you see that the red line, which is hourly compensation, is exactly in line with your productivity, which is the blue line, until about 1978. Okay? I wonder what happened in 1978. I wonder if there was 2 important decisions in 1976 and 1978 that might have actually rigged the system. So, you're productive America, that's wonderful, it's going straight up, and you're getting compensated for it. So your hourly wages are going up, your income's going up. That's exactly how a democracy is supposed to work. In 78, they start to diverge. That seems like a small divergence. I assure you it is not. So what happens instead? This happens. When you look at that broken down, in this case, this particular graph at the Atlantic put it at 73. I think the bigger divergence is a 78. But what you have is hourly compensation. In that chart, you can see flat lines. So from 78 on, you're still incredibly productive. Congratulations, America. But you didn't get the reward for that productivity. Instead, you got robbed. You got robbed. They rigged it so you paid more taxes, they paid less taxes. They rigged it so you got less wages, less regulation. They made more money from deregulation. They made more money from keeping your wages low. They kept it for the executives. They kept it for the shareholders. They kept it for the donors. So, you know what the difference between those two graphs, those two lines are? About $12 trillion. They robbed you of $12 trillion. Hey, when are we going to get that back? Now, if you say that, they say, oh, no, that's very uncivil. That's very impolite. Was it polite when they robbed you of $12 trillion? But they did it in the darkness. They did it with their lobbyists. They did it with their friends. And they did it with their TV hosts. And they did it with their mainstream media, yes, in their groupthink. And so apparently that's not uncivil. Okay, it gets worse. Okay, 12 trillion sounds like a lot, right? Someone did a study to find out how much that is for the average American. How much more would you make today if those lines matched up as they did until 1978? And this is a stunning number. It's an unbelievable number. The average American today would make $17,000 more per year. That is more than the minimum wage for a whole year's work. You'd make $17,000. They took $17,000 from every family in America. But that's not impolite. That's not uncivil. That's just a bunch of good friends in Washington and New York taking money out of your pocket and putting it into theirs. They did it in 1,000 different ways, whether it was the subsidies, it was the fact that you can't negotiate, it was the tax code, it was the wages, it was all those different things. But let me focus on one of them, which is taxes. So let me show you one last thing here. So you've got two charts here. The one on your left is the chart for how taxes were collected in 1952. So I want to point out two things there. One is social insurance and retirement. That was 9.7% of all taxes. So you pay into Social Security, and now you pay into Medicare. You do that through the payroll tax. The payroll tax is actually the most regressive tax. The middle class pays it. The working poor pays it. The rich pay it up to a certain amount, roughly around $125,000. But once you get past $125,000, the rich stop paying. They don't pay anymore. You keep on paying. It's a bigger percentage of your income. So that is the tax that comes from the middle class and people who work in America for a living. Okay? If you notice, you go to 2015, that's not 9.7 anymore. All of a sudden, holy cow, that's 33.5% of all the taxes paid. You know what they did? They moved the tax burden onto you. Now, I just showed you earlier in the slides the benefits of the taxes, $4.4 trillion in subsidies and taxpayer support for just 200 corporations was $4.4 trillion. Mm-hmm. They privatized the gains, they socialized the losses. So now you pay the taxes and they get the taxes. They get that money that you pay in taxes. So now I want you to notice one other part. In 1952, corporations are paying their fair share. You know, you can argue, and we can go back to conservatives and progressives having wonderful arguments about what the fair share should be. Should it be 32% as it was in 1952? Should it be 50%? Should it be 10%? Good, wonderful debates to have, honest debates to have. But they're paying 32%. Now, this is in 2015. If you look over to 2015 on the other side, look at that incredible coincidence. That's down to 10.8%. And that's before the Trump administration cut corporate taxes by about $2 trillion. So when you look at that in 5 years' time or in 2 years' time, that's going to be far less. But they moved their burden from 32% to about 10%. And they tell you that it's a coincidence. They spit in your face and they tell you it's raining. No, it's not a coincidence. The system is rigged. So whether you're a conservative or a progressive or a libertarian or independent, for God's sake, you're right about the problem. And if you're a conservative who's seething mad about that, you are right. They did rig it against you. If you're in the middle of West Virginia and you feel like the system's against you, you're goddamn right it is. And if you feel like the people on TV are lying to you, unfortunately, you're right. They are lying to you. A lot of them don't intend to lie to you, but they're in the middle of that groupthink. And by the way, they're all incredibly rich. You know, your local journalist in your local paper might not be rich at all, and he might still be in the swamp of groupthink. But almost all the anchors on TV are millionaires. So does that affect your perspective? Not because you're a bad person, but yes, it does affect your perspective. Okay? And so you're right, conservatives. You're right, progressives. Now, there's only one question that remains. Are you going to do anything about it? Or are you going to surrender? Because right now, we're in a situation where most people have surrendered. So they know it's bad. No matter how much the press tells them Hillary Clinton was a wonderful candidate, they didn't believe it. And, the right wing tells people Donald Trump's a wonderful guy, and he's polling the high 30s. On a great day, he brags about being at 42%. That is not popular. Okay? So, do you think that the people like Marco Rubio? No. No matter how much Joe Scarborough tells you Marco Rubio is a great candidate, you don't like him. Okay. And I can name you 1,000 corporate Democrats. Same thing. You don't like them because in your gut you know that they rigged the system. And they did. So my question to all of you, okay, not the people in this room have already answered that question in a very, very clear way. Because you went through all the sacrifice I talked about in the beginning to be here and to be at your state houses and making a difference. But all the people at home, are you going to surrender or are you going to do something about it? And by do something about it, I don't mean do crazy things and, I keep going back to Q because I don't know who he is or what insanity leads people to believe that, right? The conspiracies are much more clear and straightforward. What I want you to do about it is in your own way. Again, if you're a conservative, fight in your own way. If you're a progressive, fight in your own way. If you want to join us and be nonpartisan at WolfPac, do it that way, okay? But make sure that you stand a post and that when you are the true patriots of this country and you fight back, that you get that same level of respect that we do for soldiers in the field that we think are protecting our freedoms. And so what I want to leave you with, of course, is hope. Because it's dark times and the media is not on our side and the politicians are not on our side and Washington's not on our side and money's not on our side. But almost the entirety of the American people are on our side. They just have to hear this message. Because in New York and Washington, when you say corporations are human beings, they go, well, of course they are. Everywhere else, Nebraska, Hawaii, Rhode Island, Texas, it doesn't matter. They say, of course they're not human beings. Does it make sense that you have unlimited speech so you can yell fire in a crowded theater or you can give $1 billion to a politician? Of course it doesn't make sense. Of course that's corruption. We have the whole country on our side. You're telling me we can't win with the whole country on our side? That makes no sense. And the people who tell you that are the ones who want you to surrender. So the next time you hear someone being pessimistic and telling you there's nothing you can do, know that they are on the wrong side. Know that they want you to stay at home and stay on your couch and not fight back. Okay? So the reality is, as I've said many times, women had an impossible task in this country. They wanted the right to vote when they didn't have a right to vote. That was impossible. It was impossible. Slaves wanted freedom, but they had no weapons. They had no way of gaining that freedom. They didn't have the vote. They didn't have anything. They didn't have any property. They were property. It was impossible. But we got rid of slavery. In the South, during the Jim Crow time, there were things like Professor Lessig said, the white primary. There were so many ways that African Americans were blocked from voting. How could they possibly get civil rights if they can't vote in the first place? But they found a way. And yes, sometimes they got hot coffee thrown in their face. Sometimes they got a baton across the head. They got a cavalry charge against them on a bridge in Selma, Alabama. And they still did it. And they got the Civil Rights Act. And women, they didn't just get legislature to do something. They didn't just get a law. They didn't get a resolution. They didn't ask Congress, pretty please, can you do this at a later time? No, they got an amendment to get the right to vote. Those were American heroes. That was the best of us. That is what America is supposed to be. Ever expanding liberty and freedom. They were all freedom fighters. And they fought for not just themselves, but for us and for all future generations. And so when I look across this room, I see the same freedom fighters. And I see a great diversity here in states, in ideas, in people, and you're all here for the same fundamental idea, that there is something we can do, that united we are incredibly strong, that the point of the propaganda is to divide us. So I'm asking conservatives, I'm asking progressives, and we do fight and I fight. Those wars on the different issues, whether it's abortion, gun rights, all those different issues. But for this purpose, to put those fights aside, keep going for now, and definitely afterwards, let's re-engage, okay? But on this issue, put those fights aside and do not let them divide you. Because if you let them divide you, they're going to win forever. And it isn't going to be the people without power, it's going to be the people with power. Look up, they're the ones who rigged the system. So I'm asking you to put differences aside, whether you're conservative or independent or progressive, to join forces to say, no more corruption. We're not going to stand for it. And if you tell us, no, a convention is too much change. Some Republicans say that, a lot of Democrats say that. It's too much change. You're going to say, goddamn right it is. Because that's what we want. We want the change. Washington doesn't want the change. Television doesn't want the change. They're multi-billion-dollar corporations. Why do you think they're for the status quo? The status quo has been fantastic to them. So regular corporate politicians that take this donor money, they don't want the change. The system, why would they change a system that put them at the very top? So that is why almost everyone in power will tell you, do not do a convention. It is real change. And that is exactly why you should fight the hardest for a convention. A constitution is not something that is pristine and delicate and should never be touched. A constitution is something, our constitution, that mandates that you change it. They didn't tell you don't change the constitution. They put it into Article 5. Change it, for God's sake. Our founding fathers said you should change some portion of it and amend it every generation. And we have failed in that constitutional duty. And we are told over and over again, whatever you do, don't touch this document. Whoever tells you that doesn't understand the Constitution and perhaps has never read the Constitution. It's right there in Article 5, screaming through the generations. For God's sake, change it. You're supposed to change it. What were the founding fathers? Revolutionaries. And they built revolution into the document so that you don't have to pick up a musket like they did. They said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to deliver political revolution within the Constitution. Who changed the Articles of Confederation? They did. Who changed the establishment where the royalty ruled us all from afar, where we had taxation without representation? They did. They believed in change so much they fought for it, and some of them died for it. Now, it is the ultimate disrespect to our founding fathers and to the Constitution for people in power to say, do not change the document, do not listen to those generations that came before you that brought you this wonderful, wonderful document. And one of the great ironies they use is, oh my God, they had a convention. And they produced what? The United States Constitution. Perhaps the greatest document known to man. They said, but the boogeyman is, what if you do a runaway convention like they did, and you produce an equally great document? Woo! Don't scare me. So their worst case scenario is the thing they claim they want to protect now. How could you be in favor of protecting the United States Constitution if you don't even believe in how it was formed? If you insult that process, by the way, as Larry Lessig explained, what we're asking for is not a constitutional convention like they had back then. We're asking for an Article 5 convention. Why is it called Article 5? Because it's Article 5 of the Constitution. It's the 5th article in our Constitution. They asked you to do this change. They asked you to do this revolution. And everyone in this room has answered that call. And what I'm asking is, anyone watching this that isn't in the room, will you answer the call? In a sense, those leaders talk to us today. In a sense, Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and James Madison are in this room. But so is Martin Luther King. So is Susan B. Anthony. So are all the people who fought for those change and, by the way, put it into the Constitution. And who led that charge? You know who believed in amendments? The Founding Fathers, who put the first 10 in the Constitution. To say that the Founding Fathers were against amendments is both ahistorical and preposterous. Then why did they put 10 of them in there? And progressive groups pretend they care about the First Amendment. So they say, oh, no. The First Amendment is untouchable. And by the way, I love the First Amendment. Money is not part of the First Amendment. That's a lie. But they say, hey, I'm so afraid you're going to touch the First Amendment, so I don't want any amendments. It's the First Amendment that you are trying to change. How could you be against amendments? That makes no sense. Then you would have been against the first one. So none of their arguments make any sense. But those people who passed that First Amendment are also in this room. And what they're asking you is, are you going to stand up? Now, luckily, you don't need a musket like they did. You don't have to risk your life. But sometimes you have to risk your weekend. And sometimes you have to risk a little extra time with your family, which we all desperately want. And a lot of us have jobs that don't pay that well. And then on top of that, I'm asking you to volunteer and work hard. And I'm asking you to put aside your differences with conservatives for a second. And I'm asking you to put your differences aside with progressives for a second. And I'm asking you to put that anger aside and to make it constructive, make it legal, make it political, make it constitutional. But they're all asking you, will you stand up and fight for what they built, which is a democracy, which is a constitution that is supposed to give us rights where we rule, not the elites, not the powerful, not the donors, but a democracy where the American people rule. I hope that you answer that call. I hope we could all do it together, whether it's at wolf-pac.com or any other organization you think is fighting in the right direction. So, in conclusion, what I see, and I think what all those ghosts of years past see here, is a room full of heroes. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your work and all of your sacrifice. And I want to assure you that if we keep fighting together, I guarantee you we're going to win together. We're going to get that convention, we're going to get that amendment, and we're going to get our democracy back. Thank you.